Let me tell you a strange story of a strange town. A town hidden beyond mountains and forests where every single person was intoxicated from birth. Stumbling was normal. Slurred speech was expected. Dizziness, confusion, just part of life. And because this was all they had ever known, they didn't question it. Their intoxication was rooted in cultural traditions. Every morning they drank a special fermented beverage as part of a sacred ritual. For lunch, they consumed heavily fermented foods believed to bring strength and clarity. Over time, these practices left them in a perpetual state of intoxication. They didn't see it as a problem. It was simply their way of life. Over generations, they built their lives around their condition. They had experts, scholars and teachers, people who taught them how to walk properly while intoxicated, how to hold on to things to avoid falling, how to interpret their blurred visions. These teachers were revered, their wisdom unquestioned. Then one day, a man from a distant place arrived. He was different. He was completely sober. At first, the townspeople were fascinated. They crowded around, listening to him speak. His words were clear, his steps steady, his gaze sharp. But soon, fascination turned to unease. He made them uncomfortable. He made them feel wrong. "You must be sick," they told him. "You need to learn how to walk properly." The man tried to explain that they were the ones who were impaired, but they laughed at him. "You don't understand our ways," they said. "You need to learn from our great teachers. They will help you see clearly." A few listened. A handful even tried to become sober themselves. But most rejected him, and so the town remained as it was, stumbling, slurring, and believing that they were the ones who saw the world as it truly was. Why did I tell you this story? Because this is exactly how our world works. We are born into systems of belief, surrounded by people who have never questioned them. From childhood, we are taught that believing without question is not just normal, but virtuous. Think about it. When a child asks why too many times, parents often get annoyed. Instead of encouraging questions, they say, "Just believe, just have faith." But is belief really a virtue? Or is it just a way to suppress inquiry, to control minds, to keep people from thinking too much? And what happens when someone refuses to believe blindly? When someone asks too many questions? Well, they are ridiculed, ostracized, and sometimes even threatened. Skepticism, the very foundation of scientific progress, is seen as dangerous. A famous media personality recently warned people of dire consequences for questioning the beliefs of millions. But let's pause for a moment. If a belief were true, would it need threats to protect it? Wouldn't truth stand on its own? Why does it need the shield of fear? This is where gaslighting comes in. When a child is told that questioning is bad, that disbelief is evil, that doubt is a sin, what is really happening? They are being gaslit. Gaslighting is making someone doubt their own reality. It's a psychological manipulation technique. And what is religious indoctrination if not that? A child naturally asks, "How do you know?" And the answer they get is, "Because it's true." No reasoning, no proof, just a demand to accept. In a rational world, the burden of proof is on the one making the claim. But in this upside-down world, the burden of doubt is placed on the skeptic. Instead of proving a claim, people demand, "Prove that it is not true." The intoxicated town in the story is a perfect example. The sober man wasn't crazy. He simply saw things clearly. But instead of listening to him, the townspeople insisted that he was the one who needed fixing. This is how belief systems work. They create an environment where questioning is a disease and belief is a virtue. But belief without evidence is not a virtue, it's a weakness. Now, let's step back from modern religion and look at something older, Vedic Dharma. Unlike dogmatic religions, the Vedic philosophy does not demand belief. It's an evolutionary journey of perception, thought, and understanding. The Vedas are structured in 4 stages. Samhitas, the hymns and rituals, the starting point. Brahmanas, the detailed procedures and explanations of rituals. Aranyakas, the transition where rituals are questioned and philosophy begins. Vedanta, the Upanishads, where all rituals are discarded and pure knowledge remains. This is not a belief system. This is an intellectual process, a path that begins with mundane practices and ends with self-knowledge. The Upanishads do not command belief. They encourage questioning and understanding. Even in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Krishna tells Arjuna in chapter 4, shloka 34, to ask questions and seek knowledge from those who have known the truth. In chapter 13, Krishna states that wise sages have researched and taught using reason and logic. Where, then, is the room for blind belief? There is none. Yet, today, many have twisted Vedic Dharma to resemble organized religions, speaking of tenets and commandments where none exist. So, what is the way out of this mass intoxication of belief? The answer is simple. Raise thinkers, not believers. This is exactly what I did with my son. I did not teach him to believe the Srimad Bhagavad Gita or the Mahabharata as literal history. Instead, I showed him how to extract meaning from them. Every character, every event, every story in the Mahabharata is an analogy. Krishna is not some distant deity waiting to be pleased by your physical worship. He is the personification of wisdom, the intellect, and the voice of reason within you. Arjuna is the mind in turmoil, struggling to decide. And the war? It is the battle of life, the constant conflict between clarity and confusion due to attachments, expectations, ego, and false assumptions. By teaching in this way, I did not force belief on my son. I gave him the tools to think, to analyze, to reason, and that is the only way forward. Let's go back to the intoxicated town. Remember how they had experts teaching people how to walk properly while intoxicated? That is exactly what many religious leaders, gurus, and preachers do. They don't teach people how to wake up. They teach them how to function within their intoxicated state. But the solution is not to walk better while intoxicated. The solution is to wake up, to become sober. And that begins with one simple step. Question everything. Not with hostility, but with genuine curiosity. If something is true, it will withstand scrutiny. If it crumbles under questioning, then it was never truth to begin with. So where do we go from here? The answer isn't complicated. It starts with you right now, asking yourself, how much of what I believe have I actually verified? How much have I just accepted because I was told to? And most importantly, am I brave enough to question the things I was taught never to question? Because real awakening isn't about finding a new belief to cling to. It's about learning to stand on your own, free from all belief. And if that sounds difficult, remember, it always feels strange to wake up from a dream. From the moment we are born, we are surrounded by beliefs. Some are harmless, like believing that kindness is good, but others are dangerous. Beliefs that demand obedience, that punish doubt, that make questioning a crime. And the worst part? These beliefs are planted in the minds of innocent children before they even develop the ability to think critically. Imagine telling a child, instead of explore, question, and let us find out together, you must believe this because I said so. That's gaslighting, that's conditioning, and society celebrates this. Parents are praised for raising obedient and faithful children, while a child who asks too many questions is often labeled as disrespectful or rebellious. Think about it. Skepticism, asking for evidence, questioning assumptions, is treated as a flaw. Meanwhile, blind faith is treated as a virtue. Why? Because belief is easy, belief is comfortable, and belief is a powerful tool for control. And this is where it becomes truly absurd. In today's world, powerful figures, news personalities, politicians, self-proclaimed spiritual leaders are not just promoting belief, they are enforcing it. The well-known media figure I spoke about wasn't defending logic or reason. He was defending belief, something that requires no evidence, no questioning, no thought. This is the same mechanism at work in the intoxicated town from our story. There, the intoxicated people were taught to walk safely without questioning why they were drunk in the first place. Here, people are taught how to defend their beliefs, but never to examine whether those beliefs even make sense. The system is designed to keep people asleep, stumbling throughout life without ever realizing they can wake up. Have you ever noticed how many spiritual videos feature individuals dressed in traditional attire, adorned with kumkum or vibhuti, and speaking in a tone meant to evoke authority? While these symbols hold cultural significance, their use often feels performative, designed to appeal to audiences rather than convey genuine wisdom. But wait, let's take a step back. Why is belief even considered a virtue? Why do societies condition children to believe without question? The answer is simple. As I said earlier, it is control. When belief is unquestioned, authority is unchallenged. When belief is inherited, power is preserved. In Shloka 1863 of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Krishna asks Arjuna to reflect on his teachings and act as he wishes. There is no concept of blind belief or obedience in the Vedic Dharma. The Vedas themselves, which are structured as an intellectual evolutionary process, lead a seeker from rituals and external practices to the highest realization, I am that. There is no room for belief, only realization. No commandments, only inquiry. No fear, only understanding. Yet today, many try to distort this, then try to impose commandments, tenets, and rigid dogmas when none of them exist. So, how do we break free? How do we wake up from this intoxication of belief? The answer is simple. We must return to inquiry. Instead of telling children what to believe, we must allow them to think freely and seek clarity by asking questions. Instead of celebrating blind belief, we must celebrate curiosity. So let's go back to our story again. In the intoxicated town, only a handful dared to wake up. It wasn't easy. It was terrifying at first. But once they saw reality clearly, there was no turning back. In the 7th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks of the rarity of those who strive for perfection in self-realization. Among thousands, only a few truly seek it, and even fewer achieve it. Now I ask you, do you want to be one of those rare individuals or just one of the rest? The real challenge is not just waking up yourself, it's dealing with those who refuse to wake up. The drunken people in the town were not just intoxicated, they were defensive of being intoxicated. They resisted the sober man, mocked him, even saw him as a threat. This is exactly what happens when you challenge belief systems in the world. Try questioning a deeply held belief and you will see what happens. People react with anger, fear, and defensiveness, not because they have a rational argument, but because they are protecting their intoxication. They have been conditioned to believe that questioning is dangerous, that skepticism is a sin. Why? Because their entire reality is built on belief, not reason. If one pillar fails, the whole structure crumbles. And this is why skepticism is demonized. This is why questioning faith, tradition, or authority is seen as an attack rather than an exploration of truth. But let's be clear. Truth does not require protection. Truth does not need blind followers. Truth can withstand questioning. It welcomes it. If it collapses, it was not true. This is where we must shift the paradigm. Instead of treating belief as a virtue, we must see it for what it is: a shortcut, a crutch, a tool often used for control. And instead of treating questioning as dangerous, we must see it as the first step towards understanding. The irony is, even in deeply religious societies, people rely on reason in everyday lives. If someone tells them their money has doubled in a bank account overnight, they ask for proof. If a stranger claims to have invented a cure for every disease, they demand scientific validation. But when it comes to religion, culture, or inherited traditions, logic is simply abandoned. Why? Because questioning those things threatens the illusion. This is why it's crucial to introduce these ideas early in life. If a child is raised to think critically, to question rather than obey blindly, they grow up immune to manipulation. They see through the facade. They refuse to be intoxicated by fascinating stories and beliefs. And this is precisely what I did when raising my son. I never told him what to believe. Instead, I encouraged him to think, to explore, to question, even to challenge me. I introduced him to the Bhagavad Gita, but not as a book of commandments. I showed him how to derive meaning from it, how to see it as a guide for thought rather than a doctrine of belief. This is the way forward, not just for individuals, but for societies. Progress, after all, has never come from blind belief. It has always come from questioning, from challenging the status quo, from those who dared to wake up while the rest remained intoxicated with beliefs. Waking up is not easy, it's not comfortable, it's not pleasant. Because the moment you open your eyes, you see the mess around you. You realize that everything you took for granted, everything that was fed to you as truth, was just a construct, a set of ideas designed to keep you in line. And this is where most people hesitate. They feel the first tremors of doubt, but instead of following that path, they retreat. Why? Because waking up comes at a cost. It means isolation. It means rejection. It means being seen as the odd one out, the troublemaker, the skeptic who refuses to just believe. They want a good believer, someone who knows the rituals, memorizes the doctrines, and follows the traditions without question. But let's take this further. What happens when people wake up? When enough people start questioning, the system panics. The rulers of the intoxicated masses do everything they can to shut them down. Look at history. The greatest minds, the ones who advanced science, philosophy, and rational thought, were always seen as threats in their time. Socrates was sentenced to death for, quote-unquote, corrupting the youth, in other words, for teaching them to question. Galileo faced opposition from the church and was forced to recant his support for heliocentrism, spending the rest of his life under house arrest. Even in the modern world, whistleblowers and thinkers who challenge powerful institutions are persecuted. But the most dangerous thing you can do is allow yourself to be intimidated into silence. That is exactly what they want. The moment skeptics are stopped from speaking, the moment reason is suppressed, belief takes over again, like a creeping fog. So what is the way forward? We start by redefining what is virtuous. Belief without evidence is not a virtue. Faith in falsehoods is not noble. What is noble is the pursuit of truth, no matter how uncomfortable. What is virtuous is the courage to question, even when everyone around you is against it. Shloka 438 of the Bhagavad Gita says that there is nothing more purifying than knowledge. It certainly does not say that belief is the most purifying. And this starts with children. If we raise the next generation with reason instead of blind belief, we end the cycle. This is why I made sure my son was not taught stories but was given the tools to interpret them. I did not hand him a doctrine and say, believe this. I handed him knowledge and said, examine this. I let him dissect the characters, derive his own meanings, and apply reason to what he read. The Vedas themselves, as I explained earlier, are structured as a journey from rituals to self-realization, not a set of commandments, but an evolution of thought. And yet, what do we see today? The very people who claim to follow these texts have turned them into rigid dogmas. They have erased the emphasis on questioning and replaced it with obedience. They have transformed a path of knowledge into a cage of belief. This is why we must speak. This is why we must resist. This is why we need to wake up and shake others awake. Because the world does not need more intoxicated people trying to walk straight. It needs sober minds who refuse to be intoxicated in the first place. So ask yourself, will you be the one who wakes up, or will you stay intoxicated just because it's easier? The choice is yours. And here lies the greatest irony of all. The moment you break free from the intoxication of belief, the world labels you as the one who has lost their way. The intoxicated ones will mock you. They will tell you that you have become arrogant, that you think you know better than the collective wisdom of their traditions. They will accuse you of being heartless because you refuse to accept comforting lies. They will say you lack faith as if it is a moral failing rather than an intellectual strength. But understand this. Their reaction is not about you, it's about them. You see, when you challenge belief, you do not merely present a different perspective, you shake the foundations of their reality. Your very existence threatens the comfort they have built around themselves, and comfort is addictive. People do not want to give up their illusions because their entire identity is woven into them. This is why belief is treated as a virtue, because it keeps the illusion alive, because it prevents people from asking the one question that could unravel everything. What if I'm wrong? Let's sum it up. Why do parents teach their children to believe rather than to question? Why is skepticism frowned upon? Why are religions, cultures, and societies structured around unquestioning acceptance? Because control is easier than truth. The moment a child learns to ask why, really ask it, not just as a casual question but as a relentless pursuit, the entire system trembles. That is why institutions, religious, political, educational, work tirelessly to shape young minds before they develop critical thinking. They introduce ideas not as hypotheses but as absolute truths. They do not teach children how to think but what to think. And the result? Generations of minds that are not trained to seek truth but to defend belief. People who, instead of engaging in inquiry, engage in justification. People who do not look at evidence but cling to narratives. This is not an accident, it's by design. Now, if you point this out, as I said earlier, they will call you dangerous, a troublemaker, a threat. But that should tell you something. Truth is never afraid of inquiry. No scientific principle has ever been weakened by questioning. No mathematical truth has ever crumbled because someone doubted it. On the contrary, real knowledge strengthens under scrutiny. It refines itself, improves itself, evolves. But belief? Belief fears scrutiny. It must be shielded, protected, and imposed. It must be defended not with reason, but with force, social, emotional, sometimes even physical. Because belief cannot withstand reason. It's a fragile illusion pretending to be an unshakable truth. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with a choice. We can remain intoxicated, surrounded by others who tell us we are fine just the way we are. We can stumble through life, never questioning, never seeking, never daring to wake up. Or we can open our eyes. We can choose reason over belief, truth over comfort, knowledge over ignorance. And if that means standing alone, so be it. Because in the end, waking up is worth the price. Thank you. Stay blessed. Jai Shri Krishna.